So welcome, first and foremost, and thank you for your time today. I appreciate your time is valued and special, so I do appreciate it. This is our Meet the Journalist event, a day in the life of a journalist. It's under our banner of PR Hour live training sessions that we have, and we've opened it up as well to guest members. So we've got some great people here, and it's lovely to see some, I won't say old because I'm in that bracket, some familiar faces, should I say, that I've known for years, which is lovely, such as like Alison and Derek, and then our lovely members as well. And thank you to our guest journalists for joining us. So the way that this is going to work, hopefully in the chat you can see that Elena's put in there, or Seamus put in there for you, just a few pointers. If you can keep your video on, that would be perfect, because it makes sure that you're present and that you're listening, because the journalists have given up their valuable time. If you can also put yourself to mute unless we ask you a question, that would be perfect, other than obviously our guest journalists. You will have a chance to ask your questions, and at the end of the event we'll be showing you how you can actually submit your stories and articles and expert comments to the guest journalists, because they are actively looking for stories, but we'll get into that. So if you haven't already, please do introduce yourself so that we know what it is you do, and with your email address and website, and then there might be some collaborations or networking that can go on within this event. So we're here till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we will finish promptly, and then I will send you a follow-up email afterwards so you can see and get all the contact details. So we'll start off with introductions, if that's okay. We're going to introduce our guest journalists. It's just a 60-second quick intro. Who better for them to introduce themselves but themselves? And David, we'll start with you, if that's okay. If I can just get you to say your name, the sector you specialise in, and the media outlets you work with.
I'm Dave Howell. I'm a freelance writer, journalist, broadcaster. I've been writing about tech and business for 30 years or thereabouts. Moment, I'm mostly writing for Silicon UK, IT Pro, Forbes, and a bunch of other smaller sort of tech and business outlets, a few magazines. Most of my stuff tends to be within the sort of tech and business sector. These days, it's a lot of copywriting, a lot of content production. That can be anything from a written piece of work, which is obviously my bread and butter. These days, it's more audio. Like this week's been sort of bonkers recording for loads of podcasts this week. So audio has just gone crazy. But it's all within the tech and business sector. That's kind of my bag.
Brilliant, thank you. And obviously we can ask you more questions as we go along, so thank you. Sabui, we're going to get you to introduce yourself, if that's okay. Sabui's been working with us for years, actually. She's wonderful, and we've done some interviews with her in the past. But Sabui, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Sabui Gard, and I've been a journalist for about sort of 25 years, largely working for national newspapers. I work with a few media agencies. I specialise the sectors small business, lifestyle, and personal finance. My primary clients, I would call them, are Sage, FTSE 100 company. I'm writing some articles for them at the moment on lockdown and small business. I also am a contributing editor for an expat lifestyle website called Real Riviera, which is less glamorous than it sounds. And I also taken on some new work as of yesterday, working with Future Publishing on a new personal finance website. So I'll be writing about mortgages. So a bit of a mixed bag there.
Fantastic, thank you. I'd love to see you again. And Sally, we'll come to you next, if that's okay. Then we'll go to Marianne and then to Madeline. So Sally, can we get you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, hello everybody. Hi. So I am a business and finance journalist by background, and I currently edit Edge magazine, which is the official magazine of the Institute of Leadership and Management, which covers a broad range of leadership and management related topics, from, developing your team, or things that are quite business focused on, surviving the economic recovery, through to sort of subjects like, personal development, mental health, those kind of things. I also am a contributor to Forbes on leadership. I also do quite a lot of commercial writing as well. So yes, I do quite a broad range of different things too.
Fantastic, thank you for joining us. Marianne, can we come to you next?
Hi there, so I'm Marianne Russon. I'm a tech science and business journalist. I am essentially a freelancer, but basically that just means I basically work only for the BBC on almost basically full-time hours. I have been a tech science and business journalist for about 14 years. And essentially I write about at least 30 different topics of tech and science, essentially anything with a radio wave, everything from aerospace and defense to 3D printing, enterprise IT, cybersecurity, you name it, I've probably write about it or have written about it. Also quite keen on space. And I do a lot of stuff on business as well. I'm considered to be like one of the young people in the business unit. So I tend to do a lot of stuff to do with our underserved audience, which is basically people in their 20s and 30s, writing relevant content for them on that, and also doing a lot of just general breaking news coverage on everything from Brexit border issues to personal finance to markets and so on and so forth.
Fantastic and welcome. Thank you. Madeline, can we come to you next?
Of course. So I'm a freelance journalist, broadcaster and presenter. I've worked with lots and lots of different publications and places. I worked with BBC, Vogue, Porter, The Independent, wide variety of newspapers and outlets. I cover a lot of beauty and well-being and travel, but I suppose that's sort of segued out, bled out really into a much wider field. And my job now also includes helping brands, helping publications to sort of move forward and to diversify their output, really.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, we've got loads to cram in and we have the most amazing credentials with our journalists, so thank you so much. So this is your opportunity, guys, to ask your questions. Now we'll be getting you to put it into the chat and Elena will be looking at the questions. These are generic questions to ask so that we can all benefit. We're all here to try and learn how to approach the journalists, understand how the journalists work, what they want from the approach, that kind of thing. And then what we're going to do at the end of the session, we will be sharing with you how you can connect to them, actually submit your stories and articles and expert comments. So we're going to dive straight in with a question that I've already prepared. So if you haven't put your question in already, add your questions to chat. You can add a couple of questions if you want, and then we'll come to Elena shortly and we'll get her to read them out. So we're going to start, if it's okay, and I'll go through just all of you, actually, the journalists in order, and then we'll open it up and you can answer if you feel you can answer the question. In what is a typical day like for you, so we can understand how the journalist works? Things like how many press releases do you get, how many articles you work on in a day, are you just at your desk, are you out, how does it work? David, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Well, typical day is press releases, that's maybe from a dozen, usually to 50 on a really bad day, if you like, and everything in between. That stuff, it drops in. I will scan it. What I tend to do is I always shift that into my pending folder, which is where I keep all of this stuff. When people send me stuff, they think it just gets looked at or it gets binned. That's not the case. It all gets put into a pending folder, so I get time to look at it later. But for me, it's a resource. So if something hits my desk that I need to see if there's anything that I can find for help, I do a keyword search in that folder, and that pulls up the press releases. Yeah, so that's usually what I do for press releases. Typical day. Well, I suppose it depends on what's on my desk at the time. Usually, it's structured around if there's any recording schedules for podcasting, because those are fixed in time, and then everything else wraps around that. Typically, I'm looking at probably 10 features a month or thereabouts. So that's 2 and a bit that need to be completed every week. So it's wherever they are in the process. Excuse me. What I tend to do is I split my day. So in the morning, when I'm sort of fresher and more alive, I do the write-ups, and in the afternoon I do prep work for whichever features are going to be written for next week. I send emails regularly. It stays open, and if anything's important, I will look at that. My day tends to split between that. It's either if there's a recording due that day, that's fine. That's obviously that's fixed in stone. The morning's write-ups. Afternoon is prep work.
Brilliant, thank you. Sabui, can we come to you and ask you what your typical day looked like?
Okay, well, my day is quite I have quite a lot of press releases. So basically I get up to about 200 press releases a day. I'm getting slightly bogged down by them because the reason it being is because I cover so many different areas. So personal finance, lifestyle, and small business. So I can be working on up to 3 or 4 features, usually with very tight deadlines, all at the same time. So basically I've got 3 articles to write on mortgages for midweek next week. So I basically will be going through my press releases after this and checking out what's relevant to those sort of features and those stories. And then, I mean, I don't do any podcasting work during the day. I do have a few other side projects. So after my working day ends at about 5, I will, tackle my creative projects and a novel I'm writing on at the moment. So basically, start around 9, go through my press releases and tackle those features straight away that I have to do for very short deadlines. So that's my day. So just writing and reading a lot in a short space of time and ringing people as well.
It gives everybody a really good insight to how busy you guys are, but it's lovely that you all, you keep your submissions. I love the fact that what David says about having you can do a keyword search in your own inbox, which is fantastic. So thank you. Sally Percy, very official. Sally, can we come to you? What's your typical day look like?
Well, I tend to wake up quite early, maybe take my dog to walk. I've got 2 dogs. Then I usually come back and I've subscribed to Financial Times, so I get all their emails come in. So I usually have a look for the Financial Times because it tends to be quite relevant to my work, so I know what's going on in the world. And then I'm definitely pretty much always starting by 9, if not before. And I think, like David, I mostly try and do my written work in the morning. So usually every day I need to do a piece of written work for something or other, whether it's editorial or for my corporate client. And so I try and work in the morning because that's when my brain works best. It's a bit hard at the moment, so hot. My office is like a furnace, but I'm not complaining after this winter we had. And then, then in the afternoons, sometimes I do more written work as well. And but then I might be doing preparing questions for an interview or doing editing, because obviously I edit a magazine, so I tend to do that in the afternoon as well. In terms of press releases, I think probably I might get 30 to 40. It feels like hundreds, but I don't think it is as many as that. And I do look at them all, at least kind of really briefly, just to see if there's anything that grabs my interest.
Fantastic. Then we're going to come to that in a minute, so that's brilliant. Thank you. So Marianne, can we come to you next?
Hi there. So I think I once did a calculation. I think I get about 600 new emails every 18 hours. So yeah, currently my inbox has, I was just checking the number to tell you guys, 23,701 unread emails, because I don't open things that are not relevant. I basically scan through and I'm looking at my emails all day long, but I'm not going to open things that are not valid to me on that specific day or not of a relevant topic in general. Doesn't mean I don't see them, not at all. I'd say out of the 600 emails, about 50 to 100 would be from the BBC. We have an internal policy where we email each other about every single thing, even if it's not relevant. So I know what the Africa team is doing and what the sport team is doing, even though that's unlikely for me to ever do anything with that. So I'd say, so 1/6 is BBC emails. The others are all press releases on the 3 different topics they cover. I'd say like average day in my life. I guess it really changes because the BBC works on like shifts, and the BBC business desk is essentially staffed 24 hours. We in London, we staff it from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning. And then from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. is done by Singapore. So there's always one of us on, which means that my days basically revolve around my shifts. So essentially, I usually do a lot of night shifts. I'm the night editor a lot of the time for BBC Business Online. So on those night shifts, I'm on from 3 p.m. in the afternoon to 1 a.m. in the morning, if I'm lucky. Pandemic times, it sometimes can be a little bit longer. I also do get morning breaking news writer shifts. Those tend to run from 6 a.m. in the morning to like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's basically a mix. When I'm not on shift, I'm sleeping. It's probably my first thing. Or I'm working on some very in-depth features whereby I need to go and poke around where people don't want me to poke, and those take like a bit of time. So Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Wow. I think you get the medal for the most emails that you're getting in so far. Madeline, can we come to you?
Yeah, I thought I got a lot of emails, but not anymore. I tend to plan my days depending on what I need to do that week, rather than my day doesn't have a specific form. I run a podcast. I'm interviewed quite often. I will interview other people. I create video content. I'm writing. I'm editing, so I do lots of different things. So my days take different shapes every single day. The only constant is, emails, press releases. And I wish I was someone who had a folder that I put them in or had some sort of system, but I'm afraid I just deal with them as they come in.
I wish that too.
Yeah, I know. I wish I had some incredible system. I was quite inspired by Dave's, but sadly, I just look through them as they come in. I try to keep abreast of what's happening. If it's not relevant at all, it just stays there and I just, scan through. If it is relevant or important, or it's something to do with something I'm writing at the time or researching, or it's a press trip which I need to keep abreast of because of the field I'm in, all of that is dealt with straight away. But otherwise, it slightly gets pushed down the email inbox, which sits currently at about 800, and they're all things I need to deal with. And I'm always perpetually hoping that there'll be a clear weekend where I can just sift through. It hasn't come in the last year, but maybe it will.
Typical day in the life of a business owner, I think, as well, with the amount of stuff we have to do. And that's really great. And I think what is good is to get an insight, and perhaps this can be one of the first questions, and we'll just open this out to any of you guest journalists that would like to answer. David, you've said you do read all your emails, and all of them, I think you see, like Marianne, you've said you do have a look at the emails as they come in. So is that the headline that you're just looking at? Is that what's grabbing your attention? Perhaps any of you that you feel might want to answer that, because as entrepreneurs and as business owners, we want to get in front of you. We want you to read our email, press release, expertise. So what do we need to do to grab your attention?
100% it needs to be the headline. So I'm just looking at the emails that I'm looking at. I'll just tell you what some of these are. So I'm looking at some, I get a range, right? So I've got my first email at the top is a comment on the ONS report on economic activity, but I'm not on duty today, right? I'm not on breaking news today. I'm talking to you guys. So I don't care about that. Skip. The next one is going to be on UK is catching up to Norway in the lead on electronic vehicle adoption. That's a nice idea, but it's not necessarily newsy. If there's breaking news I need to do today, my day will be, by this time in the morning, whether I'm on the tech desk or I'm on the business desk, we would have already pitched and we already know what we're doing. So, unless you call us, it's like business, you want to catch us at 7 a.m. That's when all of the business new company results come out, right? And on the tech desk, I think we've already worked out our plan by 10 a.m. in the morning. It likely wouldn't be a feature about electronic vehicle adoption in Norway compared to UK. So skip that. And then there's something that's basically people giving me a comment about a story that happened 3 days ago. Well, that happened 3 days ago. So that's kind of the evaluation, is all this is like skip, spam, skip, BBC Africa email, skip, goes on like that. That's so brilliant. Your headline and the first two lines of text are really important.
That's really good.
Yes,
and does that go the same with you, David?
That's right, yes, because I know what I'm writing about probably for the next 4 to 6 weeks, because I have a rolling editorial schedule, for my anchor clients and then for anybody that's just asked me to write something, so I know what that is. So when I'm looking at all of the emails that come in, I know what I'm writing about in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So if it's relevant, great, then that particular email with a piece of research or whatever it is relevant to a feature. So great, there you go. If it isn't, it goes into the pending folder because it's not relevant, because I'm not covering that subject at the moment. That's one of the issues when PRs pitch me, and they obviously don't know what I'm writing about because I don't publish any kind of editorial schedule. Some magazines do, some magazines don't, because they don't know who I'm writing for. So it's a bit of a shot in the dark. So when they send me a message, that's fine. If it's relevant, great. If it isn't, then there's nothing I can do about that. It goes to my pending folder. But if it is relevant, that's great, because then I can use that contact as part of my research for whichever feature or podcast or whatever content I'm creating for a client, because it just happens to be relevant. but it's the same kind of thing. I will scan all of the headlines, and if it is a good hook, then great. Then it goes into the file for that particular feature's research, and then I'll come back to the contact when I'm ready to do the prep work.
Yeah, and that's good, because it's nice to know that it's not falling on deaf ears. You are looking at it, but we've got to help ourselves, guys. We've got to make it relevant. We've got to make sure that you've done your research with the journalists, that it matches what they're writing about. Any other comments from any of the other journalists that want to say, you know, what they look for in their headlines, or is it the headline, or do you look at every single press release?
Mine isn't necessarily the headline, but also who it comes from. I'll know which PRs I've got a good relationship with, and also who understand what I do. And there are also people who will send me emails, and I'll know that they never quite hit the mark, and you know we're not really aligned. So that also comes into consideration of how much time and energy goes into what I'm sent by them.
Fantastic. Okay, any other comments before? Yep, Sabi?
Yeah, yes, I mean, basically, I think it's Madeline said a good, wise point there. Just if you have a relationship with a PR and they continually send you stuff which is relevant to you, that's a real, you know, a heads up. If I see someone I know and they've sent me a press release, I will go to that first. It is very much to do with the headline as well. What I don't like is when someone irrelevant in a PR sense emails me and emails me and then does it in capital letters, and did you get it? And you know, you're not going to, you politely reply to them saying it's not of interest, and they will keep on doing it, and then you just have to say, look, just say this. So don't irritate the journalists. If it's not relevant, they would have told you it's not relevant. Don't keep on spamming them with capital letters and things, and funny things I've had in the past, and in the it's on a daily basis. So
no, that's a great point. Okay, so we've talked about what grabs your attention. If you haven't already, put your questions in the chat. Elena, I'm sure there's quite a lot of questions that are asking similar things, so we'll come to you in a minute to kind of read them out, because we've had so many come through, which is fantastic. If you haven't already, please do introduce yourself in the chat, and then you can download the chat conversation before this finishes. And then obviously at the end, what we'll be doing is showing you how you can connect to the journalists and submit your stories. Okay, so what's the best way to approach you guys then, in terms of, is it email? Do you like us to pick up the phone? Is it a press release, or could it just be an intro email? What's the best way for us to approach you if maybe we're an expert in something and we've got something we'd love to share with you?
For me, it definitely, I prefer, although I get a lot of emails a day, not as many as 600, for which I'm thankful. I definitely think it is email, because one thing I think is, like, you know, anyone who writes for a living knows that when you're writing, it's a massive concentration. So if you're writing about something that might need to be filed next week or even that day or whatever, and someone rings you up talking about something, and you're in the world and someone's talking about something else, it's just, you're not going to connect with it. You've got to remember, you're interrupting every time you ring a journalist. Probably you're interrupting them when their mind is on something completely different to what you're talking about. You've just disturbed their flow of activity. Like, that's actually the worst time to ever communicate with anyone. So so I still prefer emails, and I do look at them quickly. There was a question actually in the chat about what should you write about? Should you write about product launches? I'd be interested to hear what the other journalists on this call say, because what I'd say is, no, product launches are the last thing I ever want to hear about, but maybe other people will think differently on that.
Well, Sally, let's go with the flow with that, because this is where we kind of, as entrepreneurs and business owners, we want to kind of get promotion for what we're doing. And we try and tell our members time after time, your job is to tell, not sell. You know, no one's interested if you've got a product or a book come out or a launch or somewhere you've been there, but it's the story behind it, isn't it, Sally? So how do we wrap that product launch up with a story, do you think?
Well, I mean, I always kind of quite like things that are research led, actually. I always like really good stats, and actually a bit of like kind of meat behind them, because sometimes people have one good stat and then there's just sort of a bit of waffling. And you know, what I would like to see, I like to see a story, maybe it's got about a bit of based on research, about 6 strong stats. And then if there's going to be like something at the bottom saying this research was done by employee software platform, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's personally what I like. I mean, I can imagine some journalists, maybe when they have to cover product related news, maybe they are a bit more interested. But I like, and also if someone's published a book, you have the story behind their book and where they might have worked. That might be quite interesting. Someone who's got a really good, strong track record. Like you say, it is the story behind it, not necessarily that. Or if the book's on a different subject and things that haven't been published, you know, which is quite hard to achieve because there's so much repetition. But yeah, the story is really important. I think you're so right there.
And what about for the other journalists as well, in terms of people approaching you, you know, getting new expertise, new experts in your little black book? How do they go about what's the best way for you so that they can start being one of your favorites in your inbox? What's the best approach for you?
Well, that's all about research, isn't it? That's all about looking at each individual journalist and understanding what their sector is, what they've written about, you know, that kind of thing. You know, don't pitch me health and beauty, for instance. I don't write about any kind of product stuff. I don't do reviews, so don't pitch me any products because I don't do that. If you do, that's kind of instant turn off, because then that tells me that you haven't done your homework. Yeah. You just sent out this blanket email to everyone in the tech sector, hoping that, you know, the scattergun approach will hit some kind of pay dirt, and that's never going to work. You need to do your homework. Have a good look at their back catalogue of work. What do they write about? Who are they writing for? If it's a good fit, then yeah, absolutely. Then do send the message. But you've got to do your homework. You've got to understand who these people are and what they're writing about. The other thing which is also linked to the research part is what I get a load of is I'll do a feature, it goes live, cybersecurity, for instance. Yeah, 2 days later, I will get 20 emails from PRs saying, "Oh, you did this thing about cybersecurity. We have a client in the cybersecurity sector. Can we do something about?" Well, no, I've just written about cybersecurity. Yes. So why would I want to write about that again? Yeah, come back to me in about 3 or 4 months' time when I'm thinking about that subject again. Why would I want to write about that again? Yeah, you're sorry, but you missed the boat there.
That's a great point, actually, and people, people do it. You know, do you guys forward plan? David, you said you know what you're writing about for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, or whatever it is. Yeah. Or do you forward plan, and do the rest of you have forward plans as well?
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's different with you, Marianne, because you're obviously on breaking news. But with the others, do you forward plan as well?
Absolutely.
I do forward plan actually.
My clients split between anchor clients and then anyone that just calls me to write something. The anchor clients, of course, they have an expectation of certain bits of work at certain time frames, so you know what you're writing about for 4 to 6 weeks. My rolling schedule is about 6 weeks or thereabouts.
Brilliant. Okay.
So I know what I'm writing about in 6 weeks' time, because that's
so Marianne, sorry to interject because I'm going to get through all these questions. Marianne, how do you forward plan, and how far in advance then do you forward plan, and then we'll ask the others as well?
Okay, so there were several points that I wanted to make. I think there were several really interesting things people were saying. Okay, first of all, with the forward planning issue, no breaking news journalist can afford not to forward plan. What you need to understand is that our editors can ask us on a dry day to write a feature. And you got to have those ideas, like, it's even said to us, you better come to the meeting with your ideas. So if you don't have some on the back burner, what are you going to say? So that's like the fastest way to not have a job, really, to not know what's going on. So you kind of always need to know what's going on, even if you're not going to write about it, even if there's a very small chance of you writing about it. Sorry, my rabbit is like, I don't know if you can hear, my rabbit is doing something in the background. Essentially, if it gets worse, I'll go and do something with this. So essentially, I would say that you need to, yes, I do forward plan, but I'm forward planning about current topics. On the thing about favorite PRs and, whether people should email you, I'd say that I do have certain firms that I know are very good, but in tech PR, across the board, I found them to be some of the most professional PRs in our entire industry. So I don't really mind if everybody emails me, and I'd much rather they did, because I want to know about new and emerging tech. And that is basically a lot of the time stuff that people don't even understand or know about. So I would say that I don't really say I don't want people to email me. I'd say that you don't want to call me. When I first joined the BBC, we had a bit of a problem in that people were very excited that I joined. So I had tens of thousands of PRs who kept looking for the hunter numbers and trying to call me up on the business desk or on the tech desk. And it was a bit awkward because nobody else was getting loads of phone calls, and it was like my desk editor or my even like the big business editor was literally going, Marianne phoned for you, and it got really awkward, and I had to be like, please stop calling.
Yeah.
Just email me. Like, you know, this is not like a small trade magazine, you know, this is like quite a big thing, and there's like 300 journalists in this room, and like they're all looking at me going, what is going on with you? Like, don't do that. So I'd say like quite really bear in mind what the journalist wants. For me, it's always email. You can also tweet me, you can slide into my Twitter DMs if you like, but if what you're advertising to me or what you're trying to talk about is irrelevant, I'm not going to do it. I really hate people pitching me over LinkedIn. Please don't. Like, I've given you my email address on my LinkedIn profile for a reason. It even has in there asterisks and a big capital saying, please don't send me pictures. So when people send me pictures, I'm like, right, I'm never dealing with you then. But I don't really like take the time to hold grudges or do favorites. And also, if you only work with several firms, you only get several times of coverage. So like there's a really famous press PR agency in our industry who do cybersecurity news. So I basically said, I'd really like, I put an announcement out on Tech JPR, which is our PR group. And I basically said, I want to meet new PRs. I want to know more cybersecurity clients, new firms I haven't spoken to before, because I work for the state broadcaster. I don't want to speak to the same guy all the time. That's not what this is for, right? This platform is for us to have the voices of many, not the voices of very few. And actually some of the older journalists said to me, oh, have you heard of this one agency? I'm like, yes, I have. I've worked with them many times over the years. Why would I only want to work with that guy? Like, surely that's in sense biasing my own coverage. So, you know, I'm always open to ideas. I may maybe write about maybe 0.2% of them, but you should still pitch anyway.
No, these are great points, and thank you. And I think the key to this is, and you'll all have a chance to watch the replay with this, is making sure that you do your research, what they write about, so that you take the time to hit them at the right time with the right information. And that's the best way to keep in their inbox, so they go, oh yeah, I'm looking out for that, or I'm going to open that.
That's a huge thing. What Dave was saying about like getting completely random pitches. Yeah, you get like, I see my like really senior like industry stalwart enterprise IT journalists, they post some of the crazy emails they get, and like this guy is like in his 50s. What are you doing? Like, why did you do this? Well, what's wrong with you? Do some research. Like, you've got the Google, right? It takes 5 seconds. I think that's the thing that annoys me about PRs, is if they don't know what I do, when it takes literally like split seconds to Google, like I even put it all on a list for you. Well, here are my topics on my website and on my LinkedIn. You can look this up about all sorts of journalists, and they want you to know. So, you know, do your research.
Right, so that's brilliant. I mean, the nuggets that we're getting here is absolutely amazing. We're just halfway through. We're going to do some quick fire questions very shortly. I'm going to come to you, Elena, to start reading them out to us. And then if we can just read them out as quick as we can, and we'll just get the journalists, just probably one or two, just to answer very quickly. Before we do that, I just want to share with you how the journalists are using the platform with Media Matchmaker. And this is to make sure that you've got your profile all set up, because the journalists now can go in. Sabui, I've used your lovely picture. The journalist can now go in and search for your expertise. So David no longer just needs to basically go through, oh, it's not clicking. He no longer needs to go through his inbox to search for experts. He can actually search and put a keyword into our database and search for an expert. So we can search for beauty, and anybody that's registered the profile with beauty will come up. And within this database as well, it will come up and show geographically where they are on the map, and it will give all their profile details. What you'll be able to do then as the journalist is be able to go through and send them a direct message if you wanted to. What the journalist will be doing as well, just so that you know, and this is happening daily, they are submitting media requests through the platform. And then whatever you've actually set yourself up for category-wise, so any of these that you've registered with, you will receive those journal requests, and they'll let you know if they're looking for a case study or as an expert. On the other side for you, it's really important. I've logged in as Jane here, who's one of our members. I think she's on here today. You can set your profile up. The more details you can put, the better, because your profile will be so the journalists can search and do their research on you. They will be able to see everything about you. They can see any specialities that you specialize in. And what you can do in this platform as well is you can upload your photos, your videos, and your sound bites. So if you wanted to get onto radio and you wanted to report something and give them a sound bite, you can upload it and put it in the platform and send it off to the journalist. It's the best way that everything can be in one place so they can find you. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you actually create your profile and add your details in. Anybody that comes on board, you'll always get the last 24 media requests, 24 hours media requests, so that you can see, so you haven't missed anything, so you can respond to it. And then obviously you've got access to all of the training in here as well. So things like these journalist interviews. So just wanted to share that with you. All our journalists are registered, and you'll be able to access them through the platform. And I'll show you how you can contact them, watch this replay again, and then contact them to submit your stories. So Elena, I'm going to come to you. Have we got any quick questions that we can ask that you can read out, and we'll pop it to our guest journalists?
Yeah, morning all. To be honest, we've already touched on most of the questions anyway. Okay. Someone asked, do you prefer press releases, or would you just like a short pitch email instead? And going off what Marianne said as well, just as a side question, do any of you actually prefer being pitched on LinkedIn or Twitter? So how would you prefer it?
Good question. Marianne, I know we've had your answers to that. So could perhaps you can ask Madeline, how about from yourself?
Yeah, so I prefer to be emailed. I get a lot of press releases. I don't find press releases terribly useful. To me, they seem like a very formal way of presenting the information. I think my preferred email approach would be to have the informal, hello, we know each other, or blah, 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 whatever it might be. This is new, this is why it might be relevant to you, and then to have a box out or some sort of thing with the important information in. But I don't need reams and reams and reams of press releasey waffle. I find it just get bogged down in it. I just need the actual information there.
I interviewed yesterday a journalist from Money Magpie who does a lot of TV as well, and she just said, you know, she's had a lot of PR and she's on the other side and she writes as well. She said, just show me your human, show me your personal side. That's who I want to get to know. Is that right, you'd say, with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, but then that can go too far too. I sometimes have people I've never met before sort of sending me emails being like, hi, hun, or like things like this. And yes. I'm like, yeah, fine. But, you know, so I think, yeah, just somewhere in the middle, just being sort of as personable as you can be in an email, and then having the information in there. That's the best thing. It's just sort of striking that balance.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yes. For me, if you're going to, if it's a press release, yes, do send that. But in the top of the message, just pre-say the whole thing. Just give me some bullet points about what it's about, headline, bullet points, and the press release on the bottom. Because what I'll read is the title, and if it's relevant, the bullet points. And if that is relevant, that gets copied the whole lot into my research for that particular feature if it's relevant. Yeah. Don't just send me the bullet points, because then I've got to come back to you and say, yeah, great, send me the press release. It's just another email I've got to send. Yeah. So title, bullet points, then the press release.
Brilliant. One of the questions
that's a really good point there. Could I just say a thing? I send out press requests when I'm writing like in-depth pieces which I need to know a lot of industry research. I cannot stand PRs who send me an email going, hi Marianne, like I have a client, do you want to hear about them? I can't even reply to the 23,000 like emails I got in my email. You think I got time to reply to that? Like, just send the information. Like what Dave said was absolutely spot on. Like, tell me in a layman's term what it is. Like, you want to do layman's, especially with tech. Well, to be honest, with any subject, you should do layman's stuff, right? Because a journalist doesn't have few bullet points. If they're interested, guaranteed, if you are going to help them out before that pitch meeting, they will reply to you. It's because it's not relevant, or it's not written the right way, or you sent them an email asking them if they might one day be keen on hearing about something, but you didn't say what it was.
And don't pick the phone up 2 days later and say, have you received the email? Don't do that, you know.
Don't be that guy. In terms of press release, this is something I've asked numerous journalists, and we've actually had different answers to this. What do you prefer? Do you write the press release yourself, or do you actually just sometimes, if it's good enough, will you just pick it up and use it? You know, so, you know, some people, and Sabui, I've used your quote so many times when I interviewed you years ago about journalism. You said, you know, with all this journalism that we do, and I went, pardon, what did you say? And you said, you meant not journalism, journalism. So, you know, I know you have to turn so much stuff around. So in terms of, do you like to lift the press releases and use them, or do you like to write your own?
Well, I think it's probably basically, if you're writing breaking news and stuff, and Marianne, I mean, I wrote breaking news for ITN and the FT and all that stuff for years ago. It's basically you're very short of time and you have to get the headline figures out there, or the company news out there. So in that time, when you work in a newsroom or working in a tight pressured news environment, you can, I mean, I did in the past, lift figures, but it's quite lazy journalism if you're writing long form or research pieces, just basically copying and pasting that press release. You're not adding any value. You basically you shouldn't copy and paste a press release unless you're writing news and you're really under time pressure. Even then, and you're reporting figures, that's fine if it's a business news story, a breaking news story, and there's headline figures. But you can use the press release as a guide, but just don't lift the whole thing. I think it doesn't really add any value to the reader, to your own personal knowledge of the subject. I don't know whether other journalists, I mean, Dave, whether you think that as well. It's
a bit of both.
lazy. I find it
Yeah,
to be
you're
lazy.
right. I will look at the most of the press releases are for that. It's either a press release about a report or something, back there. And there's some stats, and the stats are really useful as a jumping off point because it gives the feature some context, what you're writing about. This company did this research and these were the findings, and that's where you jump off for your discussion. And usually there's a couple of quotes on the bottom end. It depends who they're from, because sometimes the press releases are quite good. Usually it's just a quote from the CEO or someone, but sometimes they've gone a bit further and they've gone to the industry and asked them for their opinions and their views of the research, and that's quite useful. You can either use a snippet of that, either pre-say what they've actually said, or what I'll do sometimes is I'll use those guys and say, okay, you said that about that report, and if they've put 2 or 3 of those on the bottom, that's great for me, because then I can go to those companies and ask them for original comment. You commented on this research, can we do a more in-depth Q&A, for instance? Because then I haven't got to find them because they've done that for me. That's great. So if you can help me to find companies which are relevant to the story that I haven't got to go and do research for, that's really useful. But you're right, pulling out large chunks of copy from a press release, that's never going to get through the subbing guys, and the editors will just, they're never going to go for that. A few lines maybe, or even take the quote and then just pre-say it yourself. Just use that as a jumping off point, and then just rewrite the thing, because they will do that. I mean, I don't know if lots of editors put this stuff through copy scraping, for instance, and just check, because it will come back and say, yeah, you lifted that verbatim from a press release, which is on their website. Some editors are happy with that, they're fine. Other editors, absolutely not.
That's a really good point, actually, and also, it's quite a relief for us as some business owners, because I'm actually dyslexic, so, and PR and dyslexic, I know, but to be able to just put the subject line and the facts, the stats behind it, and send it off to you is absolutely fantastic. So it's a bit of both, really, I suppose, isn't it? A combination. Elena, are there any more questions that we can just rattle through from, or we can just ask?
I did have a quick point, actually.
Yeah, sure.
If you basically lift anything more than 3 to 5 words, you're actually plagiarizing anyway. And I mean, if any journalist worth their salt would have been taught this in university, not that all of them listen. When I previously worked at International Business Times, we did have people who would lift wholesale copy. And if you do that, you need to have good lawyers, because the local newspapers will definitely come after you in agencies. And I did see things like that happen with people who didn't know what they were doing. But there's, as I said, more than 3 words is you're already plagiarizing.
So if they send you a press release, Marianne, and they've given you permission to send that press release, that's okay to use that if you wanted to, or have you still got to adapt that as well?
No, because again, more than 3 words lifted of someone else's text is still plagiarism. That's the rule. It doesn't change, right? Like I don't. There's no if, but, or maybe, right? Plagiarism is plagiarism. That's basically. I would say that was what I was taught in college and university, and also that is what I've never had an editor, not even like starting from like dinky little tech trade publication, who ever thought that was cool. At the BBC, that definitely is not cool. Super not cool. And also, you must always have outside comment. We would not publish any articles which didn't have external comment. The only things where you would want to lift from the press release is, obviously, we're the state broadcaster, right? We get every single government press release. So many a night I'm preparing like the news the government said, right? Because obviously we're state funded, right? We cannot do that. So obviously the government have worded stuff in a very specific way. So I may need to lift more than 3 words, because if I don't, the government PR is going to be calling us all the time of the day and night going, the hell, what did you do? So that is the only example where we need to do that. But even then, after about 5-6 words, I'm, you know, or I'm like rearranging the points. But in general, no offense, but you're a bad journalist if you were doing anything other than like lifting 3 words. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's great to get different insights from different people, which is fantastic. So we're coming almost to the end. We're coming to our last quarter of this event. So we're going to rattle through some final questions. But before we get to that, I just want to share with you on how you're going to be able to connect to the journalists. So they're all looking for submissions for articles, for expert comments. They've told you what they want. They've given you all the tips during this 3/4 of an hour. Please listen and watch this back before you approach them. And the way that we're able to approach them is simply by literally, we've created a page in here. So you will be able to, we'll send this out to you within the next 24 hours. You will be able to see their details in here. You'll be able to link back to the recent interview, and you'll be able to read their bio and their contact details. So it will take you through to their bio. So again, you can see the overview for them, and then you'll be able to submit your story to Marianne through the platform in a kind of literally give them the headline of the story and the summary of your story and expertise. So basically everything they've asked for. So this is a great way that you can connect with them. They'll know that you're coming through Media Matchmaker. They'll know that you've listened to their information. So please make sure you take the time to give them exactly what they've asked for. Any final questions, Elena, that we've got coming through?
Really quickly, I know we've already touched on how most of you like to forward plan, but how much notice, Caroline asks, how much notice do journalists need for press trips, or how long before a prominent event should you contact the journalist?
Okay, for press trips, gosh, what are those? We haven't done those for a long time. So anybody like to answer that?
Don't do press trips, don't do events. That's for the news guys, for the outlets I work for. That's not my bag. It's very, very rare. I can't remember the last time I actually attended any of those.
No, I used to work in radio years ago, and we used to have loads of them, but things have changed so much. Do any of you others do press trips or events that you go to? Is it a good way to network for you?
I do quite a lot. It's not a way to network, but it's important for what I'm doing to keep up to date, and also to, with my clients, I basically have to go to things. So I'm going on a press trip on Monday. I was invited on it about 10 days before the press trip, well, they were hedging their bets because of COVID. So everyone's sort of slightly more flexible. For me, I would say a week before is short notice. A month before is kind of good. Anything longer than that feels a bit long, unless it's a big trip like going somewhere, you know, very far away or anything like that.
Fantastic. Any other comments? Anybody else? Sally, do you go any press trips?
No, I haven't got any press trips. I do have a quick comment about the press release situation.
Okay.
It's quite a controversial topic, and I think how you might approach it might depend on the level of resources you have in the organisation you're in. But what I would say is that the fact that a lot of journalists generally won't completely copy and paste, whether they only take 3 words is debatable, but there's no excuse for sending a badly written press release because you're thinking the journalist won't get it directly. So I just wanted to emphasise that.
So what do you mean when you say a badly written press release? So they need to make sure it's professionally written, or just obviously check grammatically? What do you mean by that?
I think you should write a press release, even if journalists aren't going to go and copy and lift it straight. It should be such a good quality that you make it really easy for them to, because I'm more likely to use a press release if it's well written and I can really see what the key points are. I certainly don't think do a great headline and stick a few bullet points. I think you need to really write it well, and then the journalists are more likely to engage with it. That's just what I would say is quite important.
Fantastic, great points. Elena, any final question, and then we're just going to open it up to the journalists to give us kind of their tips of what not to do, or any final tips.
No, I think we've covered everything that they've asked.
Fantastic. We tend to always ask the same things because, we all want to know the same thing for our business, don't we? How we can approach the journalist, what's the best way, how we can position ourselves as the expert, those kind of things. In terms of, make sure you mirror the journalist, look at, who they write for, the style that they write in terms of, do they use technical words? Are they not? Is it industry led? All the things that help you. I love what David said, earlier is if they've just written something, they're not going to write about it again, but perhaps diarise it for 3 to 6 months time to then bring it up. There's been some great tips that you've shared with us from I guess journalists. Is there any kind of things you definitely do not want us to do? I think we've maybe covered most of them, but anything you can think of. Good. Yep.
Just one thing is that basically it's just to be targeted when you're approaching a journalist. And the second thing, don't suggest another client when you're writing something and say, well, actually, it's not strictly relevant to what you're writing, but my client does this. And you're just like, I don't want to, it's irrelevant, the client. So targeting, I think, is really, really important. And know your journalists who you're approaching, really. But yes, just don't suggest other clients just to by the by, because you just started out in PR and you want some exposure. I can't help you with that, I'm afraid, you know.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think the only thing I would say is you have to go the extra mile. Most press releases are about something very specific, like a piece of research, for instance, or it's a product, or they're talking about a particular subject. That's fine, but that's no use to me. That's like, where's the angle? Why would I want to use that piece of research in a feature? So the PRs need to think, okay, we've got this piece of research, whatever it's about. What would the feature be about? How would that feature be structured? You need to go that extra mile and give me an angle. You know, why would I want to use your research and what's it for? You can't just say cybersecurity. Well, I need an angle. I need something more focused than that. So if it's cybersecurity, work from home, and you've done some research about how crap people's security is on their laptops, for instance, that's the angle. So you have to think about what the angle is for my feature. Why would I want to use that, your particular expert or your particular piece of research? So PRs, if they can go the extra mile and wrap it in an idea for a feature, if I think that's going to be pretty good for my editor because I know what they like, then that kind of idea is fully formed. Then I can pitch that at my editor. If he commissions it, we're away. But I need that angle. Just say, do you want to speak to our CEO? That's no angle. Why would I speak to your CEO? What for? Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to write about your product or whatever it is? So give me an angle which I can pitch at my editors.
I agree completely with Dave on what he's just said. That's probably the same. I would say that definitely, particularly with BBC journalists who are extremely busy, you probably gain some points if you. I don't know. I suppose it's weird. You have to like come up with the idea for them, but it may not be a bad idea to do that. Is what I would say from experience. I would say for me personally, it doesn't really affect my journalism because I have my own ideas that I'm doing already. I will say that if I put out a media call. I think it's really useful to tell me what the CEO is going to say and what their viewpoint is, because even if I can't do something with it today, if it came up next week, then I could look back through the email and I might go, okay, this guy might be good for me to talk to. One thing I will give you guys as a really important tip with dealing with any national papers which do breaking news is you kind of need to be really on it with the news. You need to follow lots of really, really big journalists in your field. And I suppose like if with things with normal news, when it breaks, the moment something breaks, you want to get your clients to prepare comments and then you want to get those sent over because then when we're doing that formulaic story, right, which we've, trying not to rewrite the press release, we're then essentially we want that comment, we need it done quickly. That's when we're likely to use your comment. So that's the best time to get the comment in from your CEO. Otherwise, if the comment comes in randomly from a CEO and we're not writing a story and that's not a big topic, then yeah, there's no point.
That's a great point, and we encourage our members. So our members have access to, if they want to, depend on their media pass, a media database, so they can build their lists in there, so they can contact all the tech journalists for the national newspapers. So if there's a story that's relevant, they know they can comment on it. They can literally send it out within seconds. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know, and I can happily arrange a demo for that. But it's really important that you take on board the points that they're telling you. And it's interesting because some of you are slightly different on how you want the approach in the same thing, so it's been great. And I think what you need to take away from this is, if you'd like to connect to any of the guest journalists that are here today, please do watch these back and take on board their comments, but also take on board generically when you're contacting future journalists as well. We're doing lots of journalist interviews coming up, and we've got them that you can access as well in the Media Matchmaker Club. So you can see what they write about, find their expertise, and like you say, also like Marianne's just said, connect to them via their social media as well. Watch them, follow them, get to know their style and what they're like. Any final tips, guys, that you could like to pass on before we close up?
Sometimes it's useful if you've got any assets that you can attach as well. Obviously, I'm doing long form, so I tend to request mugshots of everyone. So send me the mugshot, and so I don't have to request it. I tend to put that in my requests, which I send it anyway. Do send me a mugshot. But if you got any other assets, then do send them. Because
when you mean assets, what do you mean?
That can be anything, images, pieces of video, audio snippets. Editors are always asking me for any kind of multimedia, which they can embed
and
in
we
their
covered
pages.
this off, and this is a great point, David. We covered this off in our last PR Hour live training about being multimedia ready, and this is why we've got the platform ready for you. So you'll be able to send the email, you can link it through to the platform and say, I've attached, you know, there's a SoundCloud in there, there's a video in there, there's you know, there's pictures that you can use as well, because you know everybody likes different things. So make sure your story is as multimedia ready as it possibly can. Think about a soundbite in terms of for commercial radio station that it's short, or if it's longer, if you want to perhaps do it as a debate. We're coming to the end. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to all our guest journalists. It's been absolutely fantastic. I hope you've got a lot out of this. We're always about educating you to do your own PR and connecting you to journalists. That's what Media Matchmaker is all about. If you haven't already, please do register your profile. There's different media passes for you as a starter, which is free. Then there's the backstage that you can secure a free trial. And then that's when you can connect to the journalists and you can get all the PR leads in as well. Then you've got an access all areas pass where you can get access to all of the journalists across the whole of the UK. So there's a plan to suit everybody. I'd much rather have you in the database so the journalists can find someone than rather nobody if they're looking for that tech expert. I just want to say thank you again, a big thank you to all our guest journalists. You've been absolutely amazing. If you want to download the chat, guys, please download it before we finish this session. I will be sending out within the next 24 hours the replay for you, and also how you can connect to the journalists and submit your submissions. But I hope you found it useful, and thank you. We're going to finish 2 minutes early, which is wonderful. Thank you guys, and thank you to everybody.
Yeah,
Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.